Hi, and welcome back. We are continuing our exploration of the aeronautical decision-making flowchart, and we are still on the top part where the four elements, pilot, aircraft, environment, and external pressures, go into creating every situation. The bottom half, which we'll get to next week, talks about how we deal with changes in that situation. So we are still in the top half, and in particular, we are on environment. The first and most obvious environmental concern is the weather. You need to have written personal minimums, at least for your first few hundred hours of flying. The reason for that is that personal minimums, if they're just in your head, tend to flex when external pressures are applied to your flight. Having a set of written personal minimums will help with that. Now, your written personal minimums don't have to stay the same. As you gain experience and confidence, your written personal minimums should reflect that. Then you get a standard route briefing before the flight. Resist the temptation to cherry pick individual weather products such as METARs and TAFs. It's important that you get a comprehensive overview of all the potential threats for the flight, and the standard briefing guarantees that you will get that. Compare all the variabilities in that briefing to your personal minimums, so ceilings, visibilities, wind, all the threats along your route. And also look for trends. Just because the ceiling is above your personal minimums at the moment doesn't mean it's safe to go if those ceilings have been steadily dropping over time. If you're going IFR, I recommend that you figure out where the nearest good VFR is, if possible, so that you have a backup plan in case of an electrical failure. I would also like you to watch the video Flight Chops, VFR into IMC, which you'll find in content. It's a really great dissertation on this person's experience flying into deteriorating weather that caught him off guard. The next thing that you'll need to do is look at the terrain along your route. Is it mountainous? Are there places to land if there's an engine failure? Look at the maximum elevation numbers along your route on the chart. Identify some safe directions to go in if you start to have problems. And also consider whether it's day or night. Nighttime flying is very different than daytime flying, and we will talk more about that later in the term. The next thing on environment is the airports that you're going to be operating in and out of. This also includes heliports and off-airport landings if that's what you're doing. You need to look into what kind of lighting is available, especially if it's at night, what kind of approaches there are. Check for NOTAMs that apply to the airport. It's very common for pilots to show up at airports and find them closed. And then choose some good alternatives along your route to pre-flight ahead of time. So that if you do have to make a diversion because of deteriorating weather or equipment problems, you've already looked at your alternatives and don't have to do it on the fly. This is especially important at night. The next thing is the airspace. You need to check for TFRs in addition to the charted airspace along your route. Use caution near military airspace because they don't always stay within their boundaries. If you're going over water, make sure that you're either within gliding distance of shore or you have survival gear on board, and the survival gear is adequate to the water you're flying over. If you end up having to ditch in the Puget Sound, for instance, you've only got 10 minutes unless you've got some sort of gear to keep you out of the water and dry. Consider filing IFR at night That will help you with your terrain clearance and communications and everything else, provided, of course, that you have the rating. Finally, it's important to think about what else might be an issue environmentally. This is one of the reasons that what we're talking about don't lend themselves very well to checklists. There's always something new that you have to consider. Right now, we're in a pandemic, and you need to think about how you're going to protect yourself and others during the course of your flight. What about noise abatement? It's not a big deal in the Northwest. There aren't too many airports with noise abatement procedures, but it becomes a really big deal if you head down into California, especially Southern California. What are the other things that in the environment that may impact your flight? You never know where the threat is.